Welcome, folks. Now, we all know that over the last few years, the left has turned America into a full-blown freak show, where personal responsibility is a hate crime and reality is forced to squeeze itself into a fat suit to avoid hurting feelings. Case in point, a 500-pound rapper who thinks the world should rearrange itself to fit her, literally. When a Lyft driver refused to play a forklift operator and give her a ride, she sued him. Now, a few days later, she showed up to the Breakfast Club and they quite literally had to roll in a couch like it was a disaster relief effort. And now she's apparently comparing herself to some kind of civil rights icon, as if Rosa Parks refused to get off the bus because the seats weren't reinforced. Somehow, in her mind, society is the problem, not, the laws of physics.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Hi, how are you?
Stormy, how you doing? Hey, King. How you, brother? You good? Nice to meet you, King.
Got it.
Yep. This the only seat y'all got?
What you want? What you need?
There's one more.
A bigger chair or something?
Is she already little?
We had
That's what I'm talking about. Good. This is accommodation.
There you go. You walked in and you said the chair was too small, so we had to bring the part of the sectional for you to sit in. And you said something. You said, "Now this is what I'm talking about: accommodations." Right?
Yes.
Well, we live in a world that's not always going to be able to accommodate people that.
But
are
we
plus
should
size.
though. We should, because we not all the same. I feel like we should. Like why not? I feel like a lot of times people think that bigger people, obese, the F word people should just be in a house, when it's like
The
we
F
not.
word?
Yeah, the F word. I'm not.
The
about
word
to-
that you can't say in your house.
Yeah.
Fat. You don't like it.
Oh.
I'm not saying that word.
Yeah, we don't use that word in my house either.
I thought you talking about the gay slur. I'm like, wait, I'm confused.
No.
No.
But I just feel like it should be accommodated. Bigger people should be accommodated, just like we accommodate the LGBT community. All those other communities.
What we just witnessed is rapper Dank, Demoss, who, by the way, has built a brand on demanding special treatment, walking into the Breakfast Club and immediately announcing that the standard chair just isn't good enough for her. So, like an emergency FEMA response, they roll out part of the sectional just to accommodate her. And instead of acknowledging that this is an exception, she smugly declares, "Now, this is what I'm talking about. Accommodations." Because apparently society's job is to custom tailor every aspect of existence to fit her personal choices. At this rate, we're 5 years away from lawsuits against gravity. Now let's talk about this grand claim she makes that bigger people should be accommodated just like the LGBT community. First of all, that's a rhetorical bait and switch and an absolute false equivalence. It's like comparing the civil rights movement of the 1960s that fought for equal protection under the law, the right to vote, and an end to state-sanctioned segregation to a personal crusade for wider doorways and reinforced seating. Meanwhile, Demoss is demanding that businesses physically restructure themselves to fit her. See the difference? One is about basic rights, the other is about forcing private citizens to provide oversized furniture and XL rideshare vehicles on demand. By this logic, the civil rights movement was about securing equal access to public accommodations, and her movement is about demanding the world swap out dining chairs for reinforced park benches. Now, Charlamagne quickly hits her with an actual dose of reality, saying, "We live in a world that's not always going to be able to accommodate people." And she just steamrolls right past it, insisting that we should accommodate everyone because we're not all the same. Well, no kidding. But there's a difference between recognizing diversity and expecting the laws of physics to be rewritten for your convenience. Society isn't a buffet where everyone gets their own personalized experience. Unless, of course, you're Demoss at an actual buffet, in which case, clear the area. Now, at the heart of this, we see Demoss pushing the entitlement fallacy. She believes that because she exists, businesses and individuals should cater to her unconditionally. This is the same logic that leads to frivolous lawsuits like the one she filed against Lyft after a driver who quite literally could not fit her in his car refused to take the trip. What's next? Suing Boeing because coach seats aren't the size of a living room? Demanding McDonald's reinforce their drive-through lanes to accommodate the weight of a mobility scooter? This whole conversation relies on emotional manipulation. She deliberately dodges words like fat and instead uses vague euphemisms to frame herself as a victim of oppression. It's an appeal to pity, convincing the audience that her situation is the result of an unjust world rather than her own life choices. But here's the kicker. Obesity isn't an identity, it's a condition. And it's one that, barring extreme medical cases, is largely preventable and reversible. So when Charlamagne points out that she chose to be this way, he's not being cruel, he's telling the truth. But apparently in today's America, stating the obvious is now a hate crime. And let's not overlook one of the most calculated tactics in this whole charade, the refusal to say the word fat. Demoss carefully dodges it, calling it the F word, like it's some kind of slur, when in reality, it's just a factual descriptor. This isn't accidental, it's deliberate. By treating the word itself as offensive, she shifts the conversation away from reality and into the realm of hurt feelings, where criticism can be dismissed as cruelty and personal responsibility can be ignored altogether. This is a classic move straight out of the left's playbook. Redefine language, shut down speech, and lean into victimhood to avoid any substantive discussion. Instead of talking about real issues like the fact that over 42% of American adults are obese, according to the CDC, or that obesity-related healthcare costs exceed $173 billion a year, we're being told to worry about whether calling someone fat is mean. Meanwhile, obesity rates continue to skyrocket like life expectancy declines, and Americans are footing the bill for preventable diseases. But sure, let's focus on how society needs to provide plus-sized Uber XLs on demand instead of addressing an actual epidemic. At the end of the day, this isn't about fairness, it's about power. Demoss isn't asking for equal treatment, she's demanding preferential treatment. She wants businesses, media, and everyday people to bend over backward to make life easier for her without any personal accountability. And the moment that anyone dares to push back, they're painted as cruel or fatphobic.
You know, all those other communities, I just feel like we outside. You know, if we inside is get up, why you in a house? You should be doing this, you should be doing that. When we outside, it's like, why you not in the house?
Well, people would say, okay, John.
Who actually told you that? Because, like, that's crazy. I don't believe that, you know, F people should stay in the house. I mean, that's how it is. We go outside and people looking at us crazy, like, you know, we getting stared at for what? Mm-hmm. Because we big, you know, like.
You know, you compared your situation to the LGBTQ, and a lot of people would say, well, LGBTQ people don't have a choice to be gay or whatever, but you have a choice to be plus size. Mm-hmm. So they want you to make better choices, eat right, work out, lose the weight.
I feel like I do.
People think
you born gay.
Just don't you start.
Now that's a debate right there.
That is, but for most, you know, let's just hypothetically say they're born gay.
I feel like I do. I work on myself, you know, and when I feel like I'm getting too much, I try to fix it, you know, like at my pace, you know, but.
I actually have to hand it to Charlamagne. He actually does something rare in media today. He pushes back with facts. He points out the obvious. Being obese is a choice. And what does Demoss do? She doesn't refute it because she can't. Instead, she just pivots to vague, emotional arguments about how people look at her crazy when she's outside. Well, yeah, people tend to stare when something is out of the ordinary. That's not oppression, that's human nature. If you see a guy walking around in a full suit of armor at the grocery store, people are going to look. That doesn't mean society needs to install jousting lanes at Walmart. And then there's a classic victimhood spin. We go outside and people are staring at us for what? Because we big? No. People are staring because modern society has normalized every form of excess except personal accountability. America has the highest obesity rates in the developed world. Nearly 42% of American adults are classified as obese according to the CDC National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. Even more alarming, 9.2% of American adults fall into the category of severely obese, meaning they have a BMI of 40 or higher, which puts them at extreme risk for a range of life-threatening conditions. This isn't a small, marginalized group being looked at funny. This is nearly half the adult population, and instead of addressing it, we're supposed to pretend like plus-size seating is the real emergency here. Now, this epidemic isn't just a personal issue, it's a national crisis that everyone is paying for. According to the CDC, obesity-related healthcare costs exceed $173 billion per year, with medical expenses for obese individuals averaging $1,861 more annually than those at a healthy weight. More than that, obesity is now the second second leading cause of preventable death in the United States, trailing only behind smoking, contributing to an estimated 300,000 deaths per year, according to the National Institutes of Health in 2023. So while we're over here debating whether it's mean to say the word fat, taxpayers are footing the bill for a problem that could be solved with a little thing called self-control. But let's talk about the real tactic at play here, the complete refusal to take ownership. Notice how Demoss doesn't outright say, I'm healthy, because even she knows that would be laughable. Instead, she dances around it with a classic, I work on myself at my pace excuse. Translation, I don't actually want to change, but I need a vague way to pretend I am so no one can criticize me. This is the same kind of linguistic gymnastics the left constantly plays, turning personal choices into unchangeable identities to avoid any discussion about personal responsibility. The real-world consequences of obesity are devastating. The CDC has linked obesity to 13 different types of cancer, including colorectal, breast, pancreatic, and liver cancer. Obese individuals are 1.5 times more likely to develop heart disease, twice as likely to develop type 2 diabetes, and have a 55% higher risk of dying from COVID-19, according to the Lancet Public Health Study from 2021. But sure, let's focus on making sure Lyft drivers don't hurt anyone's feelings instead of addressing an actual epidemic. Now here's the reality. Accommodating people with actual disabilities is one thing. Demanding that society make room for a completely preventable condition is another. Demoss can pretend she's part of a great social justice movement all she wants. But let's be real. Rosa Parks fought for a seat on the bus, not for the city to replace it with a reinforced king-size mattress. And speaking of retarded logic, next up we have the face of corruption in the Democrat Party, Maxine Waters, railing about Elon Musk and all the cuts he's making to, Democrat corruption.
Hello, everybody. We have convened here in the right place, the Treasury Department. We have got to tell Elon Musk, nobody elected your ass. Nobody told you you could get all of our private information. Nobody told you you could be in charge of the payments of this country. We have told you you've made enough money off our government yourself. And now you want to take everybody else's payroll and make sure that they don't make the kind of money that you've made. Oh, you want to use our money to go to Mars? No. We want to use our money right here in Washington, D.C., in this country. We want to make sure that all of our federal employees are protected. That's right. We've got to make sure that you know and understand nobody elected you. You think you're the president of the United States of America, the co-president that can take over, go into our private payment system and do whatever you want to do. You got another thought coming. We're going to stop you right now.
Maxine Waters, the political fossil who's been collecting a government paycheck since the Reagan administration, is now screeching about how nobody elected Elon Musk. And why? Because he has the audacity to help cut government waste and expose how DC is basically one giant money laundering operation. See, Maxine and her fellow career politicians aren't mad that Musk is involved in policy. They're mad that he's pulling back the curtain on their corruption, and they can't stand it. The real reason she's foaming at the mouth is because Musk, under President Trump's advisement, is slashing wasteful government spending, and that terrifies her. The gravy train is coming to a halt, and people like Maxine, who have spent decades using government agencies as personal ATMs, are panicking. Musk isn't just cutting spending, he's exposing exactly how much taxpayer money is getting funneled into bogus projects, corrupt slush funds, and outright fraud. And let's be honest, if there's one thing Washington can't handle, it's accountability. And then there's the best part, her claim that Musk is somehow taking over the Treasury and accessing Americans' private financial data. This is straight up tinfoil hat nonsense. What she's actually referring to is Musk being involved in efforts to audit where taxpayer money is going, and that, for someone like Maxine, is a worst-case scenario. The government, with all of its ancillary acronym-named departments, is a bloated bureaucracy. And under Democrats, it's become a black hole where taxpayer dollars vanish into programs that nobody can ever quite explain. Musk's involvement means actual transparency, and transparency is a death sentence for DC corruption. And you know who's the face of DC corruption? This guy. Anyway, her meltdown is proof of just how terrified these people are of losing their power. Waters has spent her entire career backing pork barrel spending and policies that let politicians skim off the top while taxpayers foot the bill. Now, someone with a functioning brain and no interest in playing their game is stepping in and threatening to shut it down. And that's why she's lashing out, because she knows the jig is up. And let's talk about the absurdity of her pretending to be a champion of the people. This is the same Maxine Waters who spent years defending financial institutions when it benefited her, all while conveniently not living in the crumbling, crime-ridden district she represents. She doesn't care about the working class. She cares about keeping the cash flowing to her donors, her party, and herself. That's why she's so obsessed with making sure Musk doesn't have a role in government finances, because the second an outsider gets a look at the books, the entire house of cards comes crashing down. At the end of the day, this isn't even about Musk. It's about what he represents, a threat to a political class that has been looting the system for decades. Maxine Waters isn't afraid of Musk running things. She's afraid of Elon exposing how they've been running things. And that's why she's losing her mind. But here's a problem for her. On November 5th, 2024, Trump won the popular vote. He's got a mandate. America literally voted for leadership that wants to clean up Washington. So Maxine, you can yell all you want, but nobody's buying it anymore. Your party spent years looting the treasury. Now someone's finally looking at the receipts. And guess what? You're fucked.
Aid if he doesn't do it. Elon is over in South Africa threatening Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, and telling him, we are coming in here, I'm going to create a whole battery factory. But you guys work to get something, I believe in your constitution, that says that the black South Africans and people who we fought for to get rid of apartheid now can have 30% in all of the foreign businesses that come in. Elon Musk said, I'm going to build a battery factory. I want you to get rid of that 30%. And so we said no. And so I've talked with the ambassador from South Africa. They're fighting. They're struggling. But guess what happened? Trump announced that they're going to get rid of all the foreign aid if he doesn't do it.
Well, here we go, folks. Maxine Waters, a swamp creature who's been in Congress longer than the internet has existed, is having another meltdown. This time it's because Elon Musk and Donald Trump dared to call out South Africa's race-based economic discrimination. And instead of addressing the facts, she's out here spinning some fever dream where Musk is personally invading South Africa like it's Call of Duty Pretoria ops. Apparently, in Maxine's world, Musk is threatening South African President Cyril Ramaphosa because he, brace yourself, doesn't want his company forced to hand over 30% of his ownership just for existing. What an absolute monster. Imagine being so brainwashed that you think it's normal for a government to demand a racial cut of every foreign business like some kind of organized crime racket. But that's exactly what South Africa's black economic empowerment policies do. They force companies to give up equity based purely on race, regardless of skill, merit, or investment. And Musk, being one of the few people left with a spine, said no. Now, Maxine could try addressing the actual issue, whether it's ethical, legal, or even remotely sustainable for a country to demand racial ownership quotas in private businesses. But instead, she just defaults to her usual race-baiting nonsense, talking about how South Africa fought against apartheid. Yes, Maxine, they did. And apartheid was evil. But explain to me how replacing one system of racial discrimination with another is some great victory. If discrimination was wrong in the past, it's definitely still wrong now. Fighting past oppression does not justify creating new oppression. Unless your goal was never justice, it was just a power grab with a fresh coat of paint. And that's the thing. This has never been about fairness. If America passed a law tomorrow saying 30% of all foreign business profits had to go to white Americans, Maxine would be on CNN by sunrise, foaming at the mouth, calling it white supremacy. And yet, because this particular race-based wealth redistribution scheme benefits her side, she suddenly has no problem with government-enforced discrimination. That's not civil rights. That's opportunism in a bad wig. Then she shifts gears into full hysterics, ranting about how Trump is now threatening to cut off foreign aid to South Africa if they don't change this policy. And let me just take a moment here to say, good. Why should American taxpayers be funding a government that actively enforces race-based economic discrimination? South Africa receives hundreds of millions of U.S. aid every year. And for what? So they can keep enacting apartheid in reverse while blaming all their failures on white farmers and foreign investors? If South Africa wants to keep running its economy like a third world Marxist fever dream, they can do it, just without a single dime of U.S. taxpayers' money. And let's talk about why their government is so hell-bent on keeping these policies in place. Because, spoiler alert, it's not about helping black South Africans, it's about keeping corrupt politicians in power. This country's leadership, especially the ANC, uses race politics as a smokescreen to distract from their utter failure to govern. South Africa has 32% unemployment, daily power outages, and a crime rate that makes Detroit look like Disneyland. Instead of fixing the country's actual problems, they've built their entire platform on blaming white South Africans and foreign investors for everything. It's the same old dictator playbook. Destroy the economy, blame an ethnic group, demand more government power, rinse. And Musk, to his credit, isn't playing along. That's what really has Maxine rattled. Musk is not just refusing to comply, he's exposing the scam. He's making it clear that South Africa's government is pushing away investment and destroying its own economy in the name of racial politics. And Trump, recognizing the absolute stupidity of sending foreign aid to a country actively making itself poor, is saying enough is enough. And somehow, in Maxine's warped reality, that makes them the villain. And let's also take a moment here to appreciate the comedy of Maxine Waters, of all people, suddenly pretending to care about South Africa. This is a woman who has spent decades watching her own district in Los Angeles turn into a lawless, crime-ridden disaster, while living comfortably in a multi-million-dollar mansion outside of it. But now she's deeply concerned about South Africa's economic policies. She can't even fix South Central, but she's going to lecture Elon Musk on international business ethics? Give me a break. At the end of the day, this isn't about democracy, fairness, or human rights. It's about power. It's about keeping the gravy train running for corrupt governments, both in South Africa and here at home in the U.S. Maxine Waters isn't mad that Musk is threatening South Africa. She's mad that he's exposing how they've been running things. South Africa's leaders want racial wealth redistribution instead of a functional economy. And Waters is throwing a tantrum because Trump is cutting off the funding that enables that. And here's the reality. If South Africa's government keeps pushing race-based economic warfare, they're going to drive out every investor, every foreign business, and every last hope of economic stability. And when that happens, they'll come crying to the U.S. for more aid, claiming it's our responsibility to clean up their mess. And you know what? That's not our problem. If they want to run their economy into the ground, let them. But they can do it without a single dime of American taxpayer dollars paying for it. And on to the next retard of today. Ana Navarro had this to say, and you guessed it, it is pure race baiting. Because what else does she do? Even though she's white. She is white. No question about it. She can talk with a Hispanic accent, but she's white as a fucking snowflake. And I say this as a fellow Latino who is also white. You're white, because I'm white. Even though some white people don't technically consider us to be white, but you're still white. At least white passing.
You know I don't do football, so I wasn't watching the game. But listen, I think today Donald Trump is going to sign an executive order banning black people from halftime. You remember last week we were talking about whether the NFL was capitulating to Trump by removing the term "end racism" from the end zone. Yeah. Boy, did they not capitulate to Trump. When I saw Samuel L. Jackson dressed as a black Uncle Sam introducing Kendrick Lamar, who then had like an entire formation of all black people making a U.S. flag. Listen, this much I know. All the black people on my feed were like, ooh, this is blackity black black. And all the racists who somehow get in, man, were they hopping mad. So if the racists are mad, I am happy as a clam. It was a huge, huge celebration of New Orleans, and you can't celebrate New Orleans without celebrating black culture.
Yeah.
Welcome to Black History Month, you all.
Ana Navarro, ladies and gentlemen, The View's resident expert in smug, incoherent rambling, now reduced to gloating about a Super Bowl halftime show like it's some kind of revolutionary political victory. This is what happens when you're so terminally online that you start interpreting pop culture as a personal battle against imaginary racists instead of, entertainment. Let's start with the absolute brain rot of her opening statement. She doesn't watch sports, doesn't care about football, but somehow has an ironclad political take on the halftime show. This is the hallmark of every grifting pundit on the left. People who don't engage with culture until they can turn it into a self-righteous monologue about how their political enemies must be seething. Ana Navarro doesn't care about music, sports, or culture. She only cares about finding new ways to convince her audience that Republicans are secretly plotting to outlaw black people from existing. Case in point, her little fever dream about Trump signing an executive order banning black people from halftime performances, which, let's be clear, is so stupid that it doesn't even qualify as satire. It's not even hyperbole. It's just lazy, brain-dead political projection. If anything, Trump's biggest issue with the NFL has been the kneeling protests and woke pandering, not who gets to perform at halftime. But Navarro doesn't deal in reality. She deals in manufactured outrage, where every single thing must somehow be part of a grand, evil, conservative conspiracy. Then we get her bizarre gloating over the performance itself. According to her, the NFL was supposedly trying to appease Trump by removing the phrase "end racism" from the end zones, but they somehow defied him by hiring Kendrick Lamar. Yes, truly a brave act of defiance, bringing in one of the most commercially successful, widely respected rappers of the last few years to perform at the Super Bowl. The NFL has been booking black artists for years, but Ana Navarro is acting like this is some kind of rebellion against the evil orange man. It's the political equivalent of celebrating oxygen as a radical new invention. Then she launches into this patronizing, cartoonish take about how the halftime show was blackety black, as if she's an anthropologist observing an exotic cultural phenomenon. Navarro always does this. She doesn't talk to minorities. She talks about them like she's narrating a National Geographic documentary. It's the same cringe race fetishizing nonsense that white liberals have been doing for decades, treating black culture as something to be observed, applauded, and exploited for political points. If anyone else had described the performance in such a condescending, out-of-touch way, they'd be called racist. But when Navarro does it, it's somehow progressive. And then, of course, we get the final reveal of her worldview. She says, if the racists are mad, I'm happy as a Klansman. And there it is, the classic zero-sum mindset of every deranged, self-important liberal pundit. If you don't enjoy this halftime show, you're a racist. If you thought the performance was mid, if you didn't care for the song choice, if you just don't like Kendrick Lamar's music, congratulations. You're now a part of the KKK, according to the very serious intellectual powerhouse that is Ana Navarro. And that's really the heart of it. Navarro needs imaginary racists to justify her entire shtick. She desperately wants a world where millions of Trump supporters were furiously foaming at the mouth over Kendrick Lamar's halftime show. She needs it to be true because if it's not, then what is she even doing? She doesn't have real insights. She just has her very real delusions, where every time black people do something cool, conservatives must be secretly losing their minds over it. The reality, no one cares. The only people obsessing over the racial optics of this halftime show are people like Ana Navarro. Normal people, football fans, music lovers, people who just wanted to enjoy the game, weren't sitting there analyzing the skin color of the performers like it was some academic study in critical race theory. They were either vibing to the music or most likely just kind of bored and going out to grab another beer. Personally, I found it to be boring, but who cares about my opinion? Because Navarro, like every other political grifter, has to make everything racial, everything political, everything about how conservatives are the bad guys, even if she has to invent it out of thin air. And then finally, we get the cherry on top of this disaster, her forced attempt at tying all of this to Black History Month, as if Kendrick Lamar performing at the Super Bowl is some monumental civil rights achievement. You know what isn't in the spirit of Black History Month? Using black culture as a pawn to score cheap political points. Navarro isn't celebrating black excellence. She's exploiting it for her own agenda. It's white savior nonsense dressed up in progressive rhetoric. At the end of the day, this entire rant isn't about football, music, or culture. It's about Navarro's desperate need to convince herself that she's on the right side of history. She needs to believe that conservatives are secretly enraged at Kendrick Lamar, because otherwise she'd have to admit that the real race-obsessed weirdos are people like her. So she invents enemies, sets up imaginary battles, and congratulates herself for victories that don't exist. Ana Navarro and her fellow white progressive women are out here shadowboxing, convincing you that they're winning the fight when the sun's already down. I don't think I have to tell anybody this. This isn't activism. It's not journalism. It's narcissism disguised as political commentary. At some point, you have to ask yourself, who actually benefits from this endless game of manufactured outrage? Is it the average person just trying to enjoy a football game without being lectured? Or is it the pundits, the professional grifters, the media parasites who need to keep you in a constant state of division to justify their own existence? Ana Navarro isn't here to celebrate culture. She's here to hijack it, twist it into a political weapon, and sell you the lie that everything is a battle between good and evil, where she, of course, is always on the right side. But when you step back and actually look at it, the only people obsessing over race, the only people demanding that every moment of entertainment serve a political purpose are people like her. So the real question is, how much longer are you going to let them tell you what you're supposed to care about? How much longer are you going to let them decide what offends you, what excites you, what defines you? Because the second you stop playing along, their illusion completely collapses. You tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.